When I say, who's the master? You say, no.
What is up, guys? Showing Off the King here, back with another video. So, it's bittersweet to bring you this video, guys. I have just watched the final episode of Darling in the Franxx ever. Like, it's over. You know, we just got the series finale. It was bittersweet. You know, there was a lot I loved about the episode. There was a lot I didn't like about the episode. But that's what we're here for, to talk about that. So let's just dive into it right away. So, I'm actually going to break this review down into two separate parts. The first part is going to kind of just talk about what I didn't enjoy about the episode overall. And then the remaining portion of the video will be just kind of talking about what I did enjoy about the world building and just how the overall series ended. I think for the most part this is going to definitely be a controversial series again. Tell me something that you don't know. But in general, what I thought that this episode suffered on was the whole Vrem plot. And I don't think anybody will pretty much disagree with me there. I thought that out of the episode, just kind of how 02 and Hero dealt with Vrem overall was just pointless. But there's a good and bad to that, so let me explain. So, a lot of people would call Darling in the Franxx an action-based anime, but I actually would differ on that. I think Darling in the Franxx started off as an action, ecchi, mech anime, and that's kind of what all the little pieces that you got when you first got into the actual show. But little as you went along with the actual series, layers kept getting pulled away, and you started learning more and more about the characters, and it started becoming more about the characters than the actual fighting, the actual mechs themselves, and more so about the secret of this world. How did it get to this post-apocalyptic world that they're set in? And just kind of learning more about each individual parasite and how they're coping with this new world, and just kind of unraveling all the little details. That's what Darling in the Franxx became after the first like 4 or 5 episodes. Yes, there was action peppered in from here and there just to kind of facilitate the actual pacing of the show with the action beats. But in general, Darling in the Franxx had always been a character story more so than an action shonen type, anime. Now, to say that, the reason why I say that is because at the end of the day, was the action the best part of the show? No, I don't think it was, and I think that this episode kind of proved that even more. So, this episode takes place roughly 2 years after, it first takes place 3 months after Hero and 02 go through the portal. They go through the portal, and you're just kind of seeing them traveling through the vastness of space. And, Hero and 02 are just kind of having a conversation. She even says to the audience pretty much that they're on their honeymoon. And again, I pretty much called it last week that, 02 was in her wedding dress when she kind of evolved into Strinthia path. And, again, it was clear that it was less like a wedding dress theme. So, the fact that she comes out and says, I'm, enjoying our honeymoon. And as they're traveling, they're destroying Vrem spaceships. She's shooting her one-shot beam and just taking these guys out with no problem. And they're just kind of, talking. Then we actually go back to Earth, and that's where the actual meat and potatoes of this episode. That's the part that we should focus on when it comes to Darling in the Franxx, is the actual stuff that's happening on Earth, not what's so much happening in space, because again, it's not really relevant at that moment. So on Earth, we are seeing that people have started moving on with their lives. Mitsuru and Kokoro, she's pretty much the first female on the planet in a long time to be pregnant and to be having a baby. So she's almost treated like royalty, and everyone's treating her as such. And I also thought it was kind of funny that at that exact moment, they hadn't released the rest of those parasites that everyone thought were dead. Those guys are still frozen. And at that point, they hadn't been, nothing had happened at that point. So then 2 months went to 12 months or 13 months, and the next time we get to see Earth, it's to the point now where Kokoro is actually having a baby. So she has her baby. The baby is beautiful. Mitsuru comes in. He's in love. He looks at the baby. It's just like everything is just like booming. And again, speaking from coming from the perspective of a person who is a dad, and it just kind of brought me back to the moment where I saw my first daughter born, and again, same thing with my second daughter. Just that look when you see that life that you created born, it's very, very special. So I totally understood exactly where they were going with that whole part of the show. Now, I think I'm starting to trail off a little bit. Let me kind of just rein it back in just a little bit. So I was talking about what I didn't like about the actual episode. So the fact that Hiro and Zero Two were on this mission to fight Vrem, and again, it still felt like it was just a battle against no-name, faceless villains. Vrem didn't have any personality. They were just basically these little energy beings with 3 heads, or 2 heads, 2 faces, whatever, and just in the shape of a diamond. So they were just always floating and always talking ominously, and then they always had these little drones doing the fighting for them. And again, it just never really appealed to me, to be honest with you. It just never did. And it was nice to see them traveling along and kind of doing what they wanted to do, and they were on this higher mission. But again, just seeing them fight waves and waves of mindless drones just did nothing for me at all. And to make matters worse, they actually finally get to their destination, and then somehow, some way, they manage to pull another love power-up out of their ass. So essentially, it's like the first 2 years that they were traveling, Hiro is saying to himself, I don't need to sleep, I don't need to eat or drink, I'm good. So you're establishing details about this character and this journey for people who are just like, well, how the hell is he still alive if he's only human? You guys have been traveling for 2 years, he hasn't had any food or water, and you explain that, which is great. However you want to explain it, you explained it, I accept that, good. Here's the problem. So then, here we are 8 years later, maybe I think it is 8 years. Yeah, it's 8 years later, because I think Mitsuru and Kokoro's daughter is a lot older now, and I think she was outside of the statue of 02 when they finally ended up confronting Vrem. So it had been about 8 or 9 years since they actually had left at that point. So and then you finally get to the final destination where the real battle starts, and at that exact moment you guys choose to pull the whole, oh, now all of a sudden Hiro is susceptible to being tired or going into a lost consciousness, and he's just like slipping away from 02, and he's just like kind of falling, and oh my god. And again, we just go back to this whole inner monologue about 02 and Hiro reaching out for each other. I just thought it was necessary and unnecessary at this point. I'm like, look, we've done this 2 times already, we don't need it this 3rd time. The fact that you guys are now creating more adversity for them at this final climactic moment, it didn't really make sense for me. I would have much rather seen them just have an all-out war with these guys and then just have a hard time fighting them at this point. But you didn't kind of need this whole, oh, she's losing Hiro and oh my god, what's going to happen? Because what ends up happening then is that somehow Mitsuru and Kokoro's daughter, of all people, know the word darling, and now she is somehow getting everybody together to kind of give them the love power up from space, if I'm understanding that correctly. So it was just weird. It was just very, very weird. So again, at the end of the day, Hiro 02, they get their final love power up, they grab onto Herringhorn, and they end up defeating Vrem, blowing up their home planet. And they blow up their home planet only to find out that it doesn't matter, because, well, not only blowing up their home planet, but essentially killing themselves. So, Strenzia, a path, her quote-unquote final form, doesn't make it and explodes, and it switches back to that original Strenzia form, but it's like all cloaked in gold and power, and they end up plunging their weapon right into the heart of Rem's planet core and exploding it. And again, in essence, killing their physical forms. So their souls are spread out, and their souls survive. But in doing that, Rem is still alive as well. Like nothing happens to them. He's like, we're energy, we're beyond death. So, and we'll be back. Like, so it's kind of like, what? So again, you traveled 8 to 9 years to this planet to blow it up, and you blew up a bunch of drones that didn't really have any bodies anyway, and you didn't defeat Vrem at all because they were still right there after you blew them up, and nothing was really resolved. Now I guess it's still a victory because I don't even know how it's still a victory because they literally said we'll be back. So I don't know if that's something to set up a sequel. I don't know, but again, it's just very weird to me that they would even go that route at all. When you're, I guess maybe I thought that Herringhorn would somehow be able to deal with Vrem, even though they were pure energy. I don't know, but enough talking about what I didn't enjoy about the episode. Let's talk about what I actually really enjoyed. Whew. Talk about satisfying endings, though. Talk about getting almost everything you want. The fact that Zero Two and Hero died, it was kind of sad, but it was also expected in a way. Like, I kind of knew once they left on that journey that they said could be a very long time. I had already prepared myself that they would die. The only thing that I wanted to make sure of is if they die, that they died together. So the fact that we got them to die together, then that's all I could ever ask for that relationship. I'm really happy that Mitsuru, Kokoro, and the others managed to kind of build their relationships and kind of go their own way and kind of forget about Hero and just kind of move on and do their own thing. I thought that was fantastic, and that's the part about Darling in the Franxx that I will always remember, is the world building, the relationships that they've built up over 24 episodes. So when you see the people end up with each other, it pays off. Like, I mean, Mitsuru and Kokoro with 4 beautiful children. Even Futoshi ends up with like three kids. Even Ichigo and Goro end up together. I mean, come on, guys. Like, you have to admit, like, when Goro was going on his trip, I was nervous as fuck. I was sitting there like, oh my god, he's gonna become a nomad, and then Ichigo's gonna end up with the other girl, and it's gonna be like this lesbian relationship. And again, not that there's a problem with that, but as far as like the way that I wanted the pairings to end up, I didn't want to see Ichigo with anyone else. I wanted to see Ichigo with Goro. That's what I wanted to see. So at first it was very scary seeing Ichigo, just pretty much saying goodbye to Goro. It didn't look like she cared or not. But that moment when Goro walks up to Ichigo and just plants a big fat kiss on her, I was just like, slow clap for you, brother. Slow clap for you. And is it just me? And again, I think I might have read it somewhere, but did the voice actor for Goro change, or was it just an older Goro? Because I felt like the voice actor for Goro, his voice deepened and matured a little bit. Like, he didn't sound like the Goro that I remember. Just let me know in the comment section if the voice actor changed, but he just sounded more assertive and just more stronger. Like, I was just like, all right, Goro, you get your girl. That's what's up. That's what's up. So that right there was a breath of fresh air, and just seeing that everyone else, all the other parasites that were locked up, they were defrosted, and they were joining in the society, and it looks like everybody was progressing. They were tying up all those loose ends, and we get a perspective from it was like 12 months, 13 months, 2 years, 8 years, and so on and so on. And then we come to find out at the end of the day, the only thing, Zeromi and his girl, I think they are together. They didn't. I think they're together as a couple, but I don't think they have kids. I didn't think they indicated whether or not they had kids or not. But I think maybe they're the only ones who didn't have kids at that point. But we also found out that Futoshi is now a baker, and thanks to what is her name? Oh my God, I feel so bad. You know, let me look at the notes because I'm going to really feel pretty bad if I don't get her name right. Oh gosh, this is not professional, but you know, whatever. Ikano, that's good lord. So Ikano is the doctor, and she basically figured out the aging process that all the parasites were going through and had been able to stop it. Now, I believe because she used up her energy, a lot of her own life energy in that final battle, that she was able to slow her own process, but she was not able to fully recover. So she is going to eventually die before the rest of the group. So unfortunately for that, that's a thing that's going to be happening with them. Now, she also had been the doctor for everybody. So now she's the one that's taking care of the babies and just kind of doing her part in the world as well. And if I'm not mistaken, her partner ended up being the one that used to pilot with Hero. So I actually thought that was actually very creative as well for them to kind of find. She found love as well as all the other pilots did on their own. And I guess the woman that ended up with Futoshi, I think she's just a rando. I don't think it's anybody that had any like relevance to the show. So you know, in the end, the final climactic scene is that when Zero Two blew up the planet in space, her body that was that hardened, it literally crumbled and turned into a plant. And that plant turned into a sakura tree and blossomed, and we kind of get the progression from the rest of the story from the perspective of that tree, where as it's growing, civilization is developing more and more and more. So as far as we know at this point, hundreds of years have passed, and finally we get the reincarnated spirits of Zero Two and Hero that make their way back to Earth, and they fall back into Earth, and then they are both reincarnated into two children who eventually end up meeting under that sakura tree. And again, that's how we now know that not only did everyone else have their happy ending, but it looks like Hero and Zero Two end up finding each other back on Earth again, has been reincarnated into children, and they now have an opportunity to kind of meet up and live their lives. And again, presumably it's going to be them, if Vrim ever decides to come back, that will lead the charge to fight Vrim back into submission. So I'm thinking that that's probably, and again, for me, I couldn't have asked for a better ending. You know, the fighting part of the show still kind of threw me off, and I wasn't great about that. But in general, just the way that they ended it, the way that they closed these doors, they wrapped up these loose ends. I really can't complain. I'm very, very happy with the way that things ended, minus the fighting. But for me, because Darling in the Franxx, to me, the thing that I like, 75% of what I enjoyed about the show was the actual characters and the world building. It didn't really hurt me that much that the action wasn't great at the end. Now, I will say that I will not argue with anybody that will sit there and say that they did not like this episode. I'm just saying personally from me that the story of the actual people outweighed the fact that that final battle was garbage. But let me know what you guys think. Comment in the section below. Thumbs up the video. I am one before I go. You know, I just finished wrapping up my podcast. It's going to be called the Mag Nerd Podcast, where we're talking about music, anime, and gaming. I just launched it on Stitcher, on iTunes, and you can follow us on Twitter at Mag Nerd Podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Mag Nerd Podcast. I hope you guys are definitely there to support it. I will be doing episodes weekly with my co-host, Ghostman LK4. This is Showing Off the King. Have a great day, guys.